This is the new Mazda 3, and according to Mazda, it's been designed to look like an animal about to pounce. However, I'm not so sure. You see, here's a picture of a cat about to pounce, and I don't see the similarity, but it does look a little bit like a cat doing something else, especially the back end. Anyway, enough of that. So this is the kind of car you're probably going to be considering if you're also looking at a Volkswagen Golf, a Ford Focus, a Kia Ceed, and maybe even something like an Audi A3 or a Mercedes A-Class. Now the Mazda 3 starts from about £20,500. Now let's start this review by talking about the Mazda 3's design. And I know I was a little bit derogatory at the beginning, but I do actually really like the look of this car. So the back end is really neat, and you can get higher up models with LED tail lights. I admire Mazda for this look. Real exhaust pipes. There's no fakery here, not in terms of exhaust pipes nor vents on the car. Now down the side, this is the only area that bothers me about the car. There's just a little bit too much metal there, which makes the car look under-wheeled. As you move up the range, you do have larger wheels, but these are the largest ones you can get. And you get rear privacy glass, but by and large, all Mazda 3s look pretty much identical, regardless of which version you go for, which is a good thing, because it means you don't have to pay extra to make it look nice. What's it like on the inside though? Oh, I think this car has a really nicely designed cabin. It's quite interesting, the shape of the dash feels sporty. I love the way that you're separated from your passenger, not because you're going to hate your passenger, it's because it makes the car feel more sporty. And there's interesting details on the door as well. I do really like it. With this black trim, it can feel a little bit dark in here, but then there's flashes of like aluminium accents about the place, on the steering wheel as well, and here, and the door handles. These chromey bits just help liven things up a bit, especially the Bose speaker surrounds of this particular car. I really, really like that. So it's not such an issue. In terms of the quality, well, you get leatherette on the dash, and this is soft touch, this is soft touch, this is as well. So all the bits that need to feel expensive are, whereas the bits lower down that don't really need to aren't. And even the central boss on the steering wheel, if you touch it, it feels cheap, but you don't really touch that unless you're hammering the horn because someone's annoyed you. But the chrome bits, once again, just liven it up so you ignore the cheapy plastic bit. Now there is one last thing I need to check, and it's, does it feel solid? Is that moving? No, not really. It all feels very robust. Finally though, I want to talk about the infotainment screen. The way it's kind of on the top of the dash, which is a good position, but it's a bit weird, the shape they've chosen for it. It's just kind of random. And that brings me on to this car's equipment list. So let's enter geek mode. Geek mode.
The Mazda 3 range kicks off with the SEL, and it gets a widescreen infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and a partially digital driver's display. It also has auto emergency braking to stop you crashing into stuff. And then there's automatic cruise control, which uses radar to keep you safe distance from the car in front. The next equipment level up is the SEL Lux, and that adds a rear parking camera and front parking sensors to the standard fit rear parking sensors. And then there's the keyless entry system, which automatically locks the car as you walk away from it. Next is the Sport Lux model, and it has adaptive LED headlamps which are designed not to dazzle the drivers. It also has alloy wheels for grey hue. I remember Hugh, lovely bloke. And finally there's auto dimming door mirrors. Next up is the GT Sport with its black leather interior, Bose sound system and heated steering wheel. Ow. And finally, at the top of the range is the GT Sport Tech, which adds a load of extra safety features, including auto emergency braking in reverse, thankfully.
Right, that's enough of that, otherwise it's going to be information overload. Let's continue this review by talking about the infotainment system. So, this may look like a touchscreen, but you can't actually operate it that way. Instead, you operate basic stuff with voice commands, or to control everything, you use the click wheel controller and shortcut buttons between the front seats, which to be honest is easy to do while you're driving than pressing a screen. It helps the menus are super simple, and the on-screen icons and graphics are clear and bright. The sat-nav system is fairly decent, and putting in a postcode is simple, and the system calculates routes quickly. Plus you can add a waypoint along your route in a few button presses. Really the only downside is that the traffic alerts aren't that great, but this doesn't really matter because then you can use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto to run Google Maps or Waze through your phone, and then you can use apps directly like Spotify rather than stream your music via Bluetooth. And generally the stereo is okay, but the upgraded Bose system of this car is noticeably better. Now moving on to this central screen, it's actually only the middle dial which is digital, and you can't really do that much with it. It shows a speedo, or you can flick through for some driving information and trip computer, or like your driving assistance systems and a slightly different look for the clock. Really though, it's quite simple and you can't do that much with it, and the digital dials you can get on a VW Golf are way more comprehensive. Now, in terms of actual connectivity in this car, you've got a USB port there and a CD player for some reason. Didn't realise it was still the 1990s. And under here you have another USB there and a 12-volt socket. And in this cubby you have a divider, which is quite handy because then you can move it into position to hold your mobile phone secure underneath there. There's another place to put a mobile phone down here, which is next to that other USB port, of course. Here you have a couple of cup holders. They're not too deep, they don't knock the top off it, and they're big enough to hold a larger bottle as well. There's plenty of room for large bottles in the side door bin and more bottles besides, quite big door bins actually. The glove box is only okay. I like this little cubby area here. In fact, I would use that for keeping the key in there. Now what I do find a bit odd is this central armrest, if you want to get underneath it, you can't lift it up from there, you have to slide it back slightly, and then you can open it from there, or you can slide it back further and open it from there. I don't know if that's supposed to be an adjustable armrest, but what is the difference between that and that? And who really needs to have that little space open there where you can just keep your phone in there, like I've already said? Very bizarre. Another thing that's a bit bizarre is that, well, I love the driving position on this car, and you have so much adjustment in the steering wheel. I just wish the driver's seat will go a little bit lower. You know, this is a very sporty feeling car, but you seem like you're sat on it. I mean, it probably won't matter too much if you're big or small, because there's still plenty of headroom and you can move the seat quite far back or quite close to the pedals if you want to, but it just seems a bit of a shame. At least the doors open nice and wide, so it doesn't matter if you're on the large side, you can still spill out of the car. Speaking of which, let's go check out the back seats. So, here we are in the rear of the Mazda 3. And knee room is only just okay. If you've got really lanky legs, you're going to find it a bit cramped. Also, the foot space is a bit cramped as well. You can't really slide your feet under the chair in front. Bigger issue though is that sloping roofline. Look, if I sit up dead straight, my head is touching. If you're over 6'4", you're not going to like it much in the back here. Another thing that's not great is the fact that it feels really dark and dingy in here. These rear windows are quite small and the window ledge is quite high, so smaller kids just aren't going to be able to see out. At least the rear windows, what there is of them, do go all the way down. Now if you need to carry 3 in the back at once, yeah, good luck with that. So there's a bit of a hump in the floor there, so that makes foot space even worse, and this middle seat is very uncomfortable for the person in the middle. I mean, look at this, not great. And because the car's got quite a narrow body, the people on the outer 2 seats end up having their heads pushed up against the roofline, and they're pretty much just banging their heads against these large grab handles. Now continuing here, you do have a little bit of extra practicality, so some cup holders there. You do have some door bins that will take an all right size bottle. Also, I think the quality, you know, is pretty good. I mean, that soft touch on the door, which is unusual. You don't get that in a Volkswagen Golf in the back seats, by the way. Now, what's not so good though is carrying a baby seat. You see, the rear doors are quite small, so it's quite hard to work it into place. At least the ISOFIX anchor points are easy to get to, though you might lose the removable covers. Because it's quite cramped in the back, you end up having to push the front seats forward a bit to actually accommodate the seat. And if you want to fit 2 seats in the back at once, there is absolutely no room between them for anybody to sit. Anyway, let's move on to the boot so I can continue my criticism of this car's practicality. Now, in terms of the actual capacity, it's a little bit larger than a Ford Focus is, a little bit smaller than a Volkswagen Golf, but it actually feels less practical than both of them, partly because you have these ridges intruding into the boot area, which can make it a little bit awkward to load. There's quite a significant load lip to lift your really heavy suitcases over. And then there's hardly any other features, so there's no real underfloor storage. That's for your tyre sealant and stuff like that. Yeah, no spare wheel here. And there may be a strap here, but it's really quite useless. I don't know what you're going to do with that. It's a little bit annoying really, because that's the only feature in the boot. If you want to carry longer items, you can fold down the rear seats. Easy enough to do like that. And you get a continuous floor, not completely flat, but not bad. You can slide things all the way to the front of the car, which is great. But how much can you actually carry in this Mazda 3? With the rear seats folded, there's space for 2 large boxes and a further 15 small ones. You can also fit in a bike inside without having to take any of the wheels off. With the rear seats in place, there's space for 2 large and 2 small suitcases. A baby buggy will fit 2. In fact, you'll just fit the buggy, clubs and a further soft bag in at the same time. Now, while that's not too bad, you can still fit a lot more stuff in the boot of a Skoda Octavia. Right, that's all the practicality stuff dealt with. Now it's time for me to reveal the 5 annoying things about this Mazda 3. The bonnet is so heavy, it really should be on gas struts, and you don't want to get anything caught in it because it's going to get messy. Ugh. This button here allows you to lock the car's doors from the boot, which may seem like a good idea, but if you've mistakenly left your keys inside, press that, lock the car, and then shut the boot. Yeah, you're f***ed. If someone in the back has really long legs, and then the driver suddenly decides they want to move the armrest back and does it quickly, oh yeah, it's like being kneecapped. The top specification car gets lane keeping assist. That's designed to steer, to keep you in lane, but it kind of just bounces you between the white lines, a bit like ding, ding, like you're ricocheting down the road. It's so annoying that you have to really just do all the steering yourself. There's no specific place within the car to store the load cover when you're removing it, if you want to pack the boot full. So, you know, you could leave it in here, but it takes up space. So I'm just going to see how far it can fly.
Don't worry, there's still plenty to like about this car. Here's the Carwow 5 core features.
The Mazda 3 has something called G Vectoring Control Plus. So as you're driving along, the car is automatically making very minute adjustments to the throttle inputs and the brakes to help maximise grip by changing the car's balance, a bit like a racing driver does to improve their lap times. The seats don't have a normal, slow to operate, rotary style controller for the seat recline. Instead it's just a lever, you pull it up and you can go lying flat as quick as that, or upright just as easily. I freaking love it. As well as a normal Skyactiv G petrol engine, you'll be able to get another one called the Skyactiv X, which has a special supercharge which allows it to run with the efficiency of a diesel, but the smoothness for petrol. So the best of both worlds. There's a little camera somewhere behind here, which is constantly monitoring the driver, and it can tell if their eyes are starting to shut and their mouth's starting to droop. And then if it thinks they're starting to fall asleep, it'll sound an alarm to wake them up. The car uses something called iLive, which is basically a mild hybrid system. So as you're braking, it recoups that lost energy, stores it in a battery, then uses it to power things like the electrics and the starter motor. Okay, it's time to take this new Mazda 3 for a test drive, and let's start in town. One thing I really like about the car are the controls. So the gear shifter is lovely. This manual gearbox is glorious. It's very sporty, it's very slick, it's a joy to use. So are all the pedals really nicely weighted, and the brakes, they're not grabby, but they're strong. The steering's precise yet light enough. It's all good. What's not so good though is that the car does have quite firm suspension, so it jolts you a little bit more of a bumps than a Volkswagen Golf or Ford Focus. Also, the car doesn't have quite such a tight turning circle as either of those, so you're more likely to get caught out in mini roundabouts if you need to do a U-turn. It's not a massive problem. One thing that is more of an issue though is the rearward visibility, and that can be a problem when you're pulling out at certain junctions or trying to park, as I'm going to do now. So here we go. Now one thing I do like though is that the mirror angles down automatically so you can see the curves, so you don't damage your wheels. Now I'm totally relying over the sensors because I can't see much out that back window at all, and I'm using the screen there as well. It's not too bad when you've got all the systems helping you out and you've got a decent sized space to fit in. But yeah, that rearward visibility is not great at all. Anyway, that's enough of town shenanigans. Let's head off onto the motorway. I'm actually quite surprised how good this car is as a long distance cruiser. So the old Mazda 3 was quite noisy. This one is much quieter. Also, the suspension actually gets better as you go quicker. And the seats, oh man, these seats are lovely, super comfy. You can do mile after mile in them, no problem at all. Now though, let's try the response of this petrol engine. 50 miles an hour, let's put it into fourth. There we go, and accelerate. Come on, let's see how long it takes to get to 70. It's all right, and the faster you go, the more kind of noise it makes, but it's not terrible. Really though, the in-gear punch from the diesel is better. The diesel will also give you better economy, but let's see what this one's doing. Over 40 miles per gallon. That is really good. Finally then, let's see how the Mazda 3 performs on a twisty road. So that sporty setup means that actually it does all right. It actually feels a little bit playful for a hatchback, like you can feel it moving around, not in a sort of like Larry kind of way, but more in just a fun, playful way. Quite like it. I don't think it's ultimately quite as sorted through the bends as a Ford Focus, but it's quite good fun as far as hatchbacks go. So then, what's my final verdict on the new Mazda 3? Should you avoid it? Should you consider it? Should you shortlist it? Or should you just go right ahead and buy it? Well, I reckon you should shortlist the Mazda 3. It's not the most practical hatchback, but it's a stylish and sporty thing to drive. I like it.